Good afternoon. I'm Sister Kathleen Durkin, and today, as we move through this first week of Advent and look toward the second Sunday, I have the pleasure of welcoming you to our neighborhood here at St. Joseph Retreat Center in Wheeling. For just a few minutes, I'd like to share with you some reflections that are stirring in me this Advent season. Over the Thanksgiving holidays, I had the opportunity with some family members to see It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, a tender and moving glimpse into Mr. Rogers' way of embracing humanity, his own and others, with compassion and acceptance. For those of us who often refer to the dear neighbor without distinction as our love language, this movie touched my own spirit and desire to live more fully from the relatedness and loving unity to which we are called. As noted by his wife Joanne, Fred Rogers was not a perfect man. He was one who owned his own feelings, engaged in and practiced the way he wanted to show up with others, who swam and played his way into being a loving presence to himself and others, even when he might have felt otherwise. I was deeply touched by the portrayal of his interactions, whether it was with a cynical, wounded journalist or a small, disabled child. He was tender, present, listening, and vulnerable. His words, "I love you just as you are," were deeply resonating, the kind of words that all of us long to hear. So you might ask, what does this movie have to do with Advent? Well, as I read through the hope-filled Advent scripture readings for this week, Fred Rogers seems a lot like the Jesus who was moved with pity and compassion, who feeds and heals, opens eyes with awakening, and who listens and gently challenges. He is a reflection of the Jesus who invites his hearers to be true to themselves, and who, like Jesus, stands somewhat in contrast to the powerful John the Baptist who we will meet in Sunday's Gospel. This movie is a powerful reminder to me that God so loved the world, and that this great love of humanity was poured out fully in Jesus. As each Advent season circles around, I find myself invited into the neighborhood of my own longings, with a desire to embrace and accept more fully my own and others' humanity with all of its lights and shadow. The scriptures for the season alert us to the one companion on the journey, the incarnate one, Jesus, who loves and accepts us just as we are as we traverse this life. In these times in which we sometimes experience pervasive darkness in our world, our country, our church, the planet, what is the invitation to each of us to be neighbor? Who are the ones in my neighborhood who long for my presence, compassion, and acceptance? Who or what in the larger neighborhood of the world calls for my attention with prayer, with outreach, with action? Where is my heart drawn? And then what of the neighborhood of my own heart where God continues to whisper, "I love you just as you are"? In closing these reflections, I'd like to share with you a much-loved Christmas card verse. It reads, "Out of deep longing and stilled mysterious nights, God fell into our midst like a small star twinkling in the night." So, may we continue to be awakened to the fullness of God in our midst, in whatever neighborhoods we inhabit. Thank you so much for joining me today, and may Advent blessings be yours in abundance.